The National Desk, America's News, now.
Weather warnings in effect. A third of the country still under low temperature alerts with new storms on the way ahead. Who will get hit the hardest in the coming days?
We are not at war with the Houthis. We don't seek a broader conflict, obviously, but what we can't allow to stand are these reckless, illegal, and dangerous attacks.
Fears of World War III as tensions continue to rise in the Middle East. Just how close are we to the brink? Then, health care highs. Inflation numbers are in. We're going to tell you just how much premiums have gone up in the last 30 years. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. As we come on the air, more than 105 million Americans remain on alert for dangerously low temperatures, rain, snow, and bitter cold temperatures everywhere from the Pacific Northwest to as far south as northern Florida. And as the wild weather really ticks up, we are seeing many weather-related fatalities. 14, in fact, just confirmed in this last week, including 5 in Oregon who died of suspected hypothermia, an additional 6 in Tennessee, 2 in New Jersey, and also 1 in Mississippi. And tonight, a backcountry skier in Wyoming has been declared dead following an avalanche earlier this week. This is at least the third skier to have died in the U.S. in the past week due to avalanches in 3 states. Looking at the severe weather in the Northwest, the National Weather Service warns that up to an inch of ice is possible in parts of southwest Washington and western Oregon after freezing rain. In the Northeast, lake effect snow warnings issued in Buffalo and also parts of New York, where snowfall totals could reach 4 feet by Thursday night, on top of the more than 40 inches of snow that fell last weekend. And then there's the cold. Freeze alerts in effect in Florida's Panhandle in the face of sub-freezing temperatures, but plenty of sub-zero temperatures to go around. You have negative 25 degrees in North Dakota, negative 16 in Chicago, negative 12 in Nashville. And it is impacting the nation's top airports. More than 1,000 flights have been canceled within, into, or out of the U.S. today, according to the flight tracking website FlightAware. Another 4,500 have been delayed. And new tonight, the Houthis in Yemen have been redesignated a terror group. The administration says the designation was aimed at deterring the Houthis from their ongoing aggression in the Red Sea as the specter of a wider regional war in the Middle East looms large.
How far do they want to escalate? And is it in their interest to keep doing this? Clearly, they're attempting to exploit the situation and the tensions in the Middle East. But what's happening here is not an attack against the United States. It's an attack against the international community.
The Houthis say they will continue their attacks on vessels despite the designation, and it appears they will continue to get support from Iran. Remaining defiant, here's what Iran's foreign minister had to say at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland.
If the genocide in Gaza stops, then it will lead to the end of other crises and attacks in the region.
Israel denies allegations of genocide as pressure mounts over what many countries have argued is a disproportionate use of force against civilian Palestinians. According to health authorities in Hamas-run Gaza, the number of civilians killed has exceeded 24,000, 10,000 of which they say are children. This as another threat to a widening war continues at Israel's border to the north with Hezbollah, a Lebanese militant group and political faction. Many voices, including UN's Secretary General, now calling for diplomatic solutions instead of military ones.
There are conditions to avoid it. There are perspectives of negotiation that are possible. But again, the solution in Gaza will be very important to allow for the de-escalation in the other parts of the Middle East.
With the Middle East on the brink of destabilization and with growing threats in other key regions of the world, the UK's top defense official warning tonight the world is entering a pre-war era. National correspondent Atrel Nashar takes a look at how the U.S. might respond.
One of America's closest allies warns an increasingly unstable world presents challenges unlike those faced by generations past.
These new powers are far more unstable, irrational.
British Defense Chief Grant Shapps, arguing the world is in a pre-war era, points to North Korea looking to expand its nuclear capabilities, Iran inching closer to a level of enriched uranium that could make it a nuclear power too, and
as Russia continues its illegal campaign in Ukraine, China is assessing whether the West loses its patience.
Adversaries now more connected than ever with each other. China and Russia's so-called unlimited friendship, North Korea's top diplomat traveling to Russia this week to discuss closer ties between the countries and a suspected arms deal, Iran providing drones to Russia and funding proxies in the Middle East, like the Houthis confronting U.S. forces in the Red Sea. This week, the U.S. Navy intercepted these Iranian-made weapons off the coast of Somalia on their way to Houthi fighters in Yemen. 2 Navy SEALs went missing on the mission, according to U.S. Central Command. Back in Washington,
it sure seems like we're at war right now. Anybody that believes in democracy is going to have to step up.
Policymakers and candidates debating strategies to de-escalate tension while making it clear the U.S. stands ready to respond with force. What that looks like now fiercely debated on the campaign trail.
If they want to be in every war in the history of the world, they should vote for Nikki Haley.
We've got to make sure that we're having the backs of the right friends, because if Russia wins, China wins.
We don't have enough resources, being $35 trillion in debt, to continue doing hundreds of billions of dollars. We got to focus on our issues here at home.
The threat to America, to Europe, and the world will only keep rising if we don't act. And I intend that we act.
Who voters choose in November will no doubt determine how the U.S. positions itself for what may, in fact, be a pre-war era. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Najjar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
The man you see here, Anderson Lee Aldrich, who admitted to killing 5 people and injuring more than a dozen others at an LGBTQ nightclub in Colorado Springs, has reached a deal with prosecutors to plead guilty to 50 hate crime charges and 24 firearm violations in exchange for prosecutors dropping the death penalty. Instead, they will seek multiple concurrent life sentences, and the deal now awaits a judge's approval. U.S. Marine veteran Daniel Penny, the man charged for the death of Jordan Neely last May, will stand trial. In court today, the judge denied his motion to dismiss on grounds of self-defense. Prosecutors claim the Marine veteran's chokehold on a subway directly led to Neely's death. Other passengers on the train at the time had said Neely was acting erratically. Penny has pleaded not guilty to manslaughter and negligent homicide charges. Donald Trump was back in a New York courtroom today, getting into an exchange with a new judge. Judge Lewis Kaplan, presiding over E. Jean Carroll's defamation trial, told Trump, zip it or get out. Trump could be heard telling his lawyers the trial is, quote, a witch hunt and con job as Carroll was testifying. Carroll is seeking damages, saying Trump ruined her reputation after she accused him of sexual abuse. Last year, a different jury found that Trump sexually abused Carroll in 1996 and defamed her in 2022. The Supreme Court heard a challenge today that could significantly roll back how the federal government regulates, well, pretty much everything. On the chopping block is what's known as the Chevron doctrine. It means when a judge gets a challenge on a federal rule, if the law isn't cut and dry, the court is supposed to defer its decision to agency experts themselves. Environmental groups say the rule is necessary to quickly fight evolving threats. Conservatives argue it favors progressives who favor more government regulation, and the executive branch can take advantage of it. In Cincinnati, legislators are debating a new program to pay students to attend school. The bipartisan bill would start with a test program for 4 to 8 schools at first that would pay $50 a month for an at least 90% attendance record and more money upon graduation. Throughout the first quarter of this school year, chronic absenteeism has exceeded 38%. Republican Bill Seitz, the co-author of the legislation, said the $1.5 million projected cost is worth the education.
The problem is we have persistent chronic absenteeism. And we've tried just about everything. They've tried pizza days. They've tried other incentives. And so this is a way to say, how about this? We've tried the stick approach. You don't show up, or send them the truant officer after you. Well, we don't have enough truant officers.
Coming up, immigration is a hot button issue for politicians. What we know about how the topic is faring in the minds of voters. And new numbers show cancer rates will hit a troubling milestone in 2024. Ahead, a look at the cancer that's killing more young men and women than ever before. And later, with tremendously low temperatures, what you need to know about how to keep your pipes warm and safe. And here's a live look at the White House, where President Biden earlier today hosted majority and minority leaders from both the Senate and the House to discuss national security supplemental requests. A key part of these discussions is the aid for Ukraine. Democrats have been pushing that, as well as the need for more border security as part of Republican demands. But as a debate in Washington, citizens throughout the country see immigration as a key factor in upcoming elections, as we learned from the Iowa caucuses on Monday. Christine Frizzau has more.
Trump. Iowa Republican voters this week did more than just give former President Donald Trump a decisive victory. They also revealed some of the top issues driving those decisions. 40% naming immigration as the most important issue for the nation.
Immigration is important to me. I think, they need to come, everyone needs to become legal. I think they should be more careful about letting everybody in.
It presents a difficult reality for President Joe Biden as he presses ahead in his bid to win re-election. His Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, facing an impeachment by the Republican-controlled House following 2 years of record-breaking numbers of migrants coming to the United States on his watch.
What the Biden administration is doing is illegal. It's incentivizing more illegal immigration.
And there's growing evidence the building backlash is not just from Republicans.
This is unfair what's happening to migrants and asylum seekers, and it's unfair what's happening to long-term New Yorkers. We are out of room.
In Chicago, heated buses now provide emergency shelter to migrants.
I slept sitting because there is almost no space left. The buses are also small, and you practically have to stay inside because of the heating, because it is deadly cold outside.
A change in the weather adding even more strain to a system some say has been broken for years.
What is the lesson you think America is learning right now about border security?
I think they need to listen to border communities a lot more. And finally, till it started hitting the big cities, New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., in other words, is when people start paying attention.
And paying attention, people certainly are. One reason why Republicans are keeping this issue front and center, and why some more moderate Democrats say they'll be pressing President Biden on as the campaign carries on. I'm Christine Frizzau for the National Desk.
Christine, thanks. The U.S. Commerce Department reports spending rates went up 0.6% up in December and increased compared to the 0.3% seen in November. A strong job market and higher wages helped fuel consumer spending as greater borrowing costs and higher prices continue. The National Retail Federation is expecting holiday sales to be up between 3 to 4% in November and December compared to the same time last year. Also up, new mortgage applications. According to the Mortgage Bankers Association, there was a nearly 10% rise when compared to the previous week. This after the interest rate for a 30-year fixed mortgage rate decreased to 6.75%, falling from 6.8%. While applications were up 9% for the week, they were still 20% lower than the same week 1 year ago. New tonight, cancer diagnoses in the U.S. are expected to top 2 million for the first time this year. The biggest increase is among younger patients, 50 and below, and doctors don't know why. Researchers specifically zeroing in on colorectal cancer, now the leading cause of cancer death in men and the second leading cause of cancer death in women for patients in that under 50 category. Researchers are studying factors like consuming red meat, ultra-processed foods, medication and vitamin use, and obesity as possible contributors to the uptick. But as new cases go up, some good news. Deaths attributed to cancer overall have declined by a third in the last 30 years. Doctors say a drop in smoking is a big reason why. A new report from the JAMA Network says rising premiums in healthcare costs have cost families with employer-sponsored insurance plans $125,000 in earnings over the last 30 years. In 1988, premiums roughly equaled 7.9% of an employee's salary. In 2019, the latest year we have full data, it's about 17.7%. The biggest change is for low-income employees, rising to 29% of their paycheck. The study says this has a disproportionately negative effect on people of color. The Biden administration will soon be announcing a new plan to fight overdraft fees. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is expected to unveil the new rules this week that could rein in how much a bank can charge a customer for overdrawing their account. Some of these fees are nearly $40. The nation's biggest banks are expected to fight back on this because there is a lot of money on the line, roughly $8 billion in overdraft fees annually. And just under 50,000 veterans used free emergency suicide prevention care last year. The Department of Veteran Affairs unveiled the new numbers of the first year of the program designed to address the suicide crisis that affects our brave armed service members. Last year, the VA issued a report showing the suicide rate among vets was 70% higher than the rest of the population, and that more than 17 vets die of suicide every single day. In today's numbers, the VA says more than 49,000 veterans took advantage of the emergency care and saved themselves more than $64 million in costs. Well, we see QR codes everywhere, Wi-Fi access, menus, parking garages, or downloading apps. But criminals, they've caught on. Here's National Desk's consumer reporter Cassie Arsenault.
QR codes are essentially a better form of a barcode, and people use them because you can embed more data in an image. And we see them everywhere. We see them at restaurants when we go to use the menu. We can see them at parking lots or parking garages to pay the fee. We can also see them at events. Sometimes we have to scan them to get more information or download an app. And now criminals are using them to mislead you. And unlike a URL, where you can hover your mouse over it and then decide for yourself if a website looks bogus or fishy, you don't know if a QR code is actually misleading until you scan it. Here's what the con looks like. There are several vehicles it can come in. It can be a poster or a piece of paper at a parking lot or garage, like I mentioned. It can come in an email, a text message. You can even find it on social media or on websites on the internet. And criminals use them for 3 different reasons. The first one is they try to get your login credentials or your passwords. The other one is they'll try to scam you out of money. And last, they'll try to put viruses or malware on your phone.
So this was an email I got at work.
Okay.
You know, you see a Microsoft logo on it, SharePoint. That is the official Microsoft SharePoint logo. Employee benefits plan for the year 2023, 2024. Your documents have been signed, blah, 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 blah. Now, first off, and see this again, where you have to ask yourself, why would my employer send me an email where I need to use a QR code on my phone to read this? I'm already on a computer. We use SharePoint. Why would this ever make any sense? People are getting scammed in all kinds of different ways as a result of this. And again, as far as I know, Microsoft, Google, none of these guys that provide some of the biggest mail hosting services in the world currently have a way to deal with this, because it's just an it's just an image, right? It's just an image. You would literally have to scan it and test it somehow.
So how can you protect yourself? Your first defense is awareness. Your second is skepticism. Never scan a QR code that's not from a reputable source. And very rarely will you have to scan a QR code if you're already at your computer or you have your phone, because most likely you would just be able to click a link. Even in restaurants, if you have the option, ask for a tangible menu, because it's very easy for someone to make their own QR code and put it over the sticker that's on a piece of paper or on the table. Fighting fraud, I'm Cassie Arsenault.
Thanks for those tips. And coming up, a major city dealing with major thefts of equipment from their fire department. What was taken and what they're doing about it. We have reporters all across the country covering the issues that matter most to you. We are taking the pulse of America.
So they took our BLS box and our airway bags.
These firefighters are still sorting out what was stolen.
It's a bag of chains and straps.
Lieutenant Dylan Tapia of Pierce County Fire District 13 says this rig was ransacked while parked outside a grocery store.
A citizen came in and informed us that someone was poking through our compartments.
The firefighters ran out of the store just in time to see the thieves speed off. Do you think they knew what they were going for on the fire rig?
I think they had an idea of what they wanted.
The fire department lost saws, axes, and other tools, which firefighter Alondra Sword says won't be easy to replace.
Some of it has a wait list that could put us months and thousands of dollars behind.
For now, the department is pulling what they can from other fire trucks.
They ruined our ability to do a lot of stuff that we're here to do.
It's definitely frozen.
Scenes like this
That's on top of the expansion tank.
have been happening all over the place over the last couple of days.
At least 50 a day. I mean, Austin's a big place, and it's just insane.
Andres Flores is a plumber with Stan's Heating and Air. We went with him to go answer a call for a frozen pipe. The problem is, often when there's a frozen pipe, like at this house,
Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about this one since it's frozen shut.
so while there's no magic foolproof solution to preventing frozen pipes, tonight before one more freeze, there are a few things you can do, particularly if you've got an outdoor water heater like this one.
What we want to go ahead and do is just go ahead and unplug it, come over here to the gas, turn off the gas, the water.
He means turn off the water, especially before it's too late, like with this one.
This one's frozen shut.
Is there anything you can do as it's frozen, or is this pretty much all work that you need to do ahead of time?
That's all work you need to do ahead of time.
Staff at Dorchester Paul say they see this action happen way too often. On January 11th, a pet renamed Parker became another victim of animal dumping.
And they found this dog just tied to one of our signs that is right there in front of the building, in front of our pet support lobby. He was standing there with his little bone that someone had just left with him, and he was tied by his leash to the post.
In South Carolina, animal dumping is illegal. If convicted on a first offense, you could face up to 90 days in prison or pay a fine up to $1,000. Dorchester Paws provides resources if you're struggling to keep your pet.
We have all sorts of avenues that we have helped people with, and that's because they've been open and honest about their situation, and we were able to figure out a way to help them.
Well, Bobby, the world's oldest dog ever, has lost his big title for now. Guinness says it is reviewing the achievement after reviewing input from veterinarians questioning the dog's age. Bobby was said to have been born in 1992 and died last October. Bobby's owner notes Guinness World Records had spent a year checking the record claim, and he has not earned any money from the title. We'll continue to update you on that. But that does it for this edition of the National Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage of America's top stories. Just check your local listings. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.